Delta Bark. The demand is crashing fast. Look at the numbers. This trend is absolutely terminal.
Today, we are talking about an industry that didn't just change travel, it completely blew it up. The short-term rental market. It made people fortunes, it redrew the maps of our cities, and it gave us a whole new way to experience the world. But now, well, it looks like that entire industry is in some serious trouble.
And we're not talking about some small niche market. This is a $100 billion industry, a total behemoth that completely redefined tourism, pulling millions of us out of cookie-cutter hotels and into someone's spare room, their apartment, or their vacation home.
But then you see quotes like this, and you realize something has gone wrong. The whole vibe has changed. You know, the very people who built this thing and the customers who made it a phenomenon are actually starting to walk away. The party, it really might be over. So yeah, what exactly happened here? How did an idea that was so revolutionary get so, well, complicated? To really get it, you have to look at the four key players in this whole drama. You've got the hosts, the guests, the public, and, of course, the platforms themselves. Each one is facing its own crisis, and it's threatening to bring the whole thing down. But before we get into the problems, we've got to rewind a bit. Because to understand how far it's fallen, you really need to appreciate just how groundbreaking this idea was at the very beginning. It all started with a super simple problem. You see, back in 2007, these two designers, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, realized every single hotel in San Francisco was booked solid for a conference. So what they do? They threw an air mattress in their spare room and rented it out. They called it Air Bed and Breakfast. And from that one single air mattress, the company, now just Airbnb, exploded into a giant worth more than Hilton and Wyndham combined. Just incredible. And you can see exactly why it worked so well. On one hand, you had the old hotels. You know, kind of pricey, every room looks the same, full of services maybe you didn't need if you were on vacation. But then you had early Airbnb. It was way cheaper, it felt like an actual home with a kitchen, maybe a couple of bedrooms, and it gave you a kind of privacy that you just couldn't get in a hotel. It was a total game changer, no question. But this is where the story starts to get a little messy. And it starts with our first group, the hosts. These are the people who were supposed to be the biggest winners in all this, but now a lot of them are feeling seriously squeezed. For so many hosts, the journey was almost identical. It kicked off as a cool side hustle, right? Rent out a spare room, make some extra cash, and it's way more flexible than getting a full-time roommate. But then it turned into a real investment. People started renting out entire houses, making maybe double what they could from a long-term tenant. For a few, it even became an empire. They became these Airbnb barons, buying up properties left and right. But now we're at the last step, the squeeze. The market is just flooded with listings. Bookings are getting harder to find, and that huge profit margin, it's getting thinner and thinner. And that's really the heart of it. The platform's own success created this problem. It pushed so hard for new hosts to sign up that the market just got completely oversaturated. For a lot of them, the dream of easy money has turned into a high-risk headache. And for those who took out big loans expecting sky-high profits, some might even have to sell. Okay, so that's the hosts. Now let's flip to the other side of the transaction, the guests. The very customers who made Airbnb a household name are getting pretty fed up, and the reasons are crystal clear. You look at Airbnb's marketing, and it's all about this cozy idea of an authentic local experience, right? You're going to connect with your host, share a story. It's this really friendly, personal picture. But is that what we actually want when we go on vacation? Well, the data says, not really. It turns out a whopping 70% of guests book a place where they have the entire home all to themselves. That whole fantasy of sipping coffee with a friendly local host, it's mostly just that, a fantasy. Most of us just want our own space. And here is the biggest issue of all. Look at this. Bookings are way up since 2019, sure, but the total amount of money people are spending has gone up right along with it. What does that mean? Simple. Airbnb isn't the cheap option anymore. Not by a long shot. It's now a premium choice, with prices that are right up there with nice hotels. The original bargain has just vanished. So it all comes down to this. First, the price just isn't a selling point anymore. Second, the big hotel chains have caught up. They're offering apartment-style rooms with kitchens now too. And finally, the service has taken a nosedive.
Guests are complaining about having to do a bunch of chores before they leave, only to get hit with these outrageous cleaning fees. It's just not a great experience.
This all leads us to the third major problem, and honestly, this might be the biggest one yet: the public backlash. The actual communities where all these rentals are located, they are starting to fight back, and they're fighting back hard. Here's the fundamental conflict, plain and simple. Property owners quickly figured out they could make way more money renting a place to tourists for a weekend than to a local family for a whole year. And the result? It's driven up housing costs and priced long-term residents right out of their own neighborhoods. This has created a huge affordability crisis in cities all over the world. And people have had enough. Cities are rolling out all sorts of new restrictive rules. They're slapping extra taxes on hosts. Some places are even banning short-term rentals altogether. And it's not just governments. Even local homeowners associations are putting a stop to it because they just don't want to deal with the constant turnover of strangers in their buildings. And if you want to know why the crackdown is so intense, just look at a city like Los Angeles. An estimated 45%, almost half, of all short-term rental listings there are illegal in one way or another. A lot of hosts are just ignoring the rules, thinking of fines as just another business expense. And of course, that just makes everybody angrier and leads to even tougher laws. All right, which brings us to the final piece of this puzzle, the platform itself. Because while Airbnb looks like this invincible tech titan, its business model is actually surprisingly fragile. You have to remember, for a long time, Airbnb was pretty much the only game in town. Well, not anymore. Now you've got huge players in the travel industry like TripAdvisor, Booking.com, and Expedia all muscling in. Not to mention all the smaller, local agencies. Suddenly, it's a very crowded field. And this really exposes the biggest threat to Airbnb. Look, their model is insanely profitable. They take a cut of around 17% on every booking, but they don't really have what you'd call a competitive moat. Besides their famous brand name, there's nothing really stopping a competitor from popping up, doing the exact same thing, but charging a lower fee, and then just stealing away both the hosts and the guests. So when you put it all together, you've got angry hosts, frustrated guests, furious communities, and a vulnerable business model. It all points to a much bigger question. This whole sharing economy thing promised us a better, more connected, more efficient way of doing things. But when one company's success causes so many problems for so many people, you just have to ask yourself, was this model ever really designed to last in the first place? It's definitely something to think about.